Welcome to the 14th episode of building a 2D game for multiplayers in Flutter. We're not using any frameworks, nor are we using any libraries. We're just using Flutter straight up, using the canvas to draw to. And as you may know, I already did something similar before up to a certain point, and I was using the Flame framework. But in this case, I decided to redo this from scratch without any framework at all. So here we have the playlist of the videos that I uploaded. And so you can see I uploaded up to 13. As I mentioned before, episode 11 is still stuck in Twitch. I don't know what to do about that. I try to get support to help me out, but we'll see. In the worst case, as I said, I will just have to do a summary episode for that to explain what we did in there, and then we'll be fine. So like always, what we'll do first is we'll create a tag, right? So we have a tag for every episode. We have the start and the end tag. So this will be the start tag for this episode. Well, you have to tell it that we want to tag it, and we don't have to push anything yet. So what I wanted to do in this episode, again, I'll do 2 hours in total from now, and we'll do about 1 hour, about 5 minutes before the top of the hour. I'll take a break for 5 minutes and come back for another hour after that. So what we were working on last episode, we were trying to basically build a little HUD display with the player health, which we did, except that the player health right now is not hooked up at all. Like, it's not updating. And we'll look at different ways how we can basically communicate when the player health changes so that our HUD will update. But one thing I wanted to do first, I want to do something fun first. We noticed how kind of this grid around here is not moving at all. And we had this interesting little effect. Actually, let me make it bigger. You can see that even more. Like, we had this interesting effect where, I don't know, it looked kind of interesting. So what I was going to do, I was going to see if maybe instead of not following the camera at all with this part here, right? The grid is not following the camera at all right now. What if you follow the camera just a little bit, but always slower than the rest of the game, right? So basically, we set the camera position, draw the grid, and then set the camera position again, draw the grid. And that camera position that we use for and draw the game, and the camera position that we will use to draw the grid will not be the same as for the game. It will be slightly behind. Like, so the camera is already trailing the player a little bit, right? It's not following the player 100%, kind of like locked onto the player, right? But we will make this even less locked on the player, and that way we should get some sort of a little interesting effect. So what we'll have to do for that, and this is a nice little thing, if it doesn't work, we'll just throw it away and move on. But I'm going to create another camera here. I'm going to call that background camera, right? And I'm going to, the camera itself we set to 0. We're going to do the same thing for, let me actually put this below. Okay, and then we're going to set the background camera also to offset 0. All right. And now, whenever we change the camera here, right? So here we're doing this. We now need to, basically what we'll do before we draw the grid, we'll basically translate the grid to, translate the camera to something different. But what we actually do, we do this inside rendering the grid. So, let's just do it before. But basically what we'll do, we have to save the state of the canvas, and afterwards we have to restore it. Otherwise we get very confused because now then we translate twice, right? And we don't want to get too confused there. What we want to do is we want to here translate the canvas to the background camera. Background camera. And background camera. All right. So now all we need to do whenever we update and we do the camera follow, what we'll do is we'll have a lerp, and then we have another lerp, which will be the, let's just say the background lerp. And we'll say that is the lerp itself, and is, let's just say 0.3 to get some real strong effect. And so what we'll do then, well, actually what we can actually do, we can say the camera we translate like this, and the background camera we translate like this. Already has the lerp factored in, right? So if we actually multiply here 0.3, that's the same as doing it, and we don't have to introduce so many variables. Okay, right? So we'll make this into a variable actually. So let's just say final background extra lerp, or we just call it lerp, background lerp, right? And we multiply with that. Okay, and now we should have some interesting effects. So let me open my okay, all right. So now actually we should be able to restart the game. Okay, so now we got very, very confused here. So let's see what happened here. This didn't seem to work at all. Well, let's just keep it simple, and we'll do it, make the background camera the same. So what happens then? Okay, that's really confusing. I'm not sure why this is not working. And this might be where I'm going to just upward this little experiment and say it's not working. I'm not, oh, because we do camera, yeah, so it should actually work. In this case, like the grid is now moving with our game, right? Well, the thing is, it seems like we're not drawing enough lines here. That's one problem. I'm not sure why. We draw the grid. We give it our size. Right, but we're basically giving the size of the window, I think, which is probably not right. We need to give it the number of rows actually that we'd have. So I wonder if we added that to the game. If it's available there, we'll just use it. N rows and calls. Okay. So what we need to make sure, we just need to draw the grid for the number of n rows and n calls. So let's say n rows and calls, and that's on the game. And I think it's private like this. Yep. And then the game. Okay. And so let's go in here and change that. We have an end and rows and calls. And then basically we just go, instead of going by the size width, we do this, and then here we go to the n rows. And we let's see what we do here. Yeah, so we need the, so the width, the entire width will be the number of calls times the tile size, or the, let's call it the delta, right? Same thing. And the total height will be the number of rows, and then this would be times. And then we can just say this is basically the total height, and then this is the total width. Okay, I can't type today. So size is shown but is not used. Where are you saying that? Okay, we don't need that. And yeah, we're not using background lerp yet. Okay, so let's try it now. Now we should have enough grid. Okay, that still didn't work. Now we have almost no grid. Oh, wow, confusing. I'm going to put a breakpoint here. I'm going to stop it and rerun in debug mode to figure out what's going on here. That's what happens when you try to do something, when you have an idea and you think it's going to be easy. But actually, in this case, it's probably not so bad because we're starting to realize what maybe we don't understand yet. So I don't know. Oh, we have to remove all these breakpoints. They're still around here from me trying to fix that bug. If you remember, we had this bug where it crashed on the phone. So we have n rows 11 and calls 26. That sounds about right. And then if we go in here and render, so let's see, we are doing the tile size is 40. Then we get the total width 1040, 440. That sounds about right. So obviously this doesn't need to be 0.0 anymore. So total height is 440. So you want to draw a line from. So let's put a breakpoint here and see what happens. So we are at column 0, right? So we'll basically draw a line from 0, 0 to 0 and then the total height. And the total height is 440. So 0, 0 to 0, 440. That sounds about right. Now if we do this again, now, okay, remove that breakpoint. Now we're going to do this. So the call is still 0. Weird. Call is still 0. Wow. Why? Is that correct? Why is call? That is weird. Call plus equals delta. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to make oh, it needs to be smaller than n calls times it needs to be smaller than the total width, right? And this needs to be smaller than the total height. And probably we want to draw the last one, but just make that smaller or equal. And now this should work. So I don't think we need to debug it anymore at this point. So yeah, we're basically, this is actually not the column. This is kind of the column coordinate, so to speak, right? So we could have actually just ran, and that's what we might do. We could have just ran through the, okay, that still doesn't work like we expect. We got some part of the grid here. So let's just draw the grid again where we had it. Let's just not move the canvas at all. So let's not do this. Okay, now we got the grid. And so the grid is kind of, yeah, so the grid is now in the correct space somewhat, right? So if we move the player up, we should kind of go to the right. So if we make this big, we can actually see this better. So the grid is drawn down here, which makes sense, right? Because it's drawn from the bottom, right? Now, if we were to translate the camera before, right? We should have the grid exactly around the game, yeah. So now the grid is exactly with the game, right? So now we're drawing the grid just around our world, right? But the thing is that what we want to do is we don't want to draw the grid just around the world. We want to make it a little bit bigger, right? So what we'll do is we'll build in like some extra rows, right? So let's just say we'll do final extra, or let's say leading columns and leading rows. or let's just say margin columns and then margin rows, because we're going to apply them left and right. Okay, so we're going to set this to a default value. This dot margin rows equals, let's say, we put 100 extra. Let's say 20. And then the same thing for margin colors. All right. We can't do this if it's not optional. All right. So, and now what we'll do is we'll say is minus the margin, right? And the total width is basically now n calls plus this dot margin calls times 2, right? Because we're going to put them in front and the end. Oh no, but we don't have to. Let's see. Yeah, and then we can basically go from 0. Except we want to be draw to the left. So let's think about this. Yeah, so that's fine. The total width is actually just going to be including to the right, and then we'll start to the left. That makes sense. Except that this needs to be calls, right? And then we're going to do here minus this dot margin rows, and we're going to do n rows plus this dot margin rows. All right, so now we should get extra stuff. Whoa, okay. I'm just gonna see what happens here. Int is not a subtype of double. Where did this happen? So what we need to do, we just need to make this a double, right? And just like make sure that this, we declare this also as a double. It's kind of weird that they are doubles. But except, you know what, actually this can't be, it has to be times delta also, right? Since we are basically working with the coordinates already, so it has to be times delta. Okay, let's restart the game and see what happens. Wow, this is already way more time than I thought we'd spend on this. But that's fine. We're not doing this to get anything done, right? This is more to just learn how to do this in general. Okay, now we got, okay, we got something right and something wrong. So we got the, oh, it's because we are not, so basically we're drawing here, we need to actually, so what we need to do is we need to say left is this, right? And then we go from left to right. And so what we need to do instead of 0 for, hold on, this is actually top, right? Let me think. No, this is actually left, right? So we need to actually, the column needs to be, should actually work. So, but except that, okay, and then top, right? And top is basically this, right? And like this is, actually this is not, this is actually the bottom, right? So it's kind of like down here, right? And so we use the bottom here. And so actually it needs to be, let's just name this and say this is the margin Y. Actually that's margin X. So we can think about this better. And then we have margin Y, and so we go margin X is left, right? Makes sense. And then this is margin y. Usually helps to name things in order to understand what you're actually doing. So margin y is this, and then the bottom is minus margin y, right? So what we actually need to do, we start, actually this is not exactly the margin, this is start x. So what we're going to do is we're going to calculate start x and start y and end x and start y, and then we'll be happy. So okay, hold on, this was correct, this was margin, and then we'll say that the start x is that, the start y is that, and then the end x is basically what is. So we'll start. We make this simpler again. We say this is actually the grid that we're actually drawing. This is actually the game size, right? So this was the game size. So let's call this game width. And then let's call this game height, right? So now we have the game width and game height, and then the start is there, and the end is basically the game width, right? Plus the margin x, right? And then the end y is the game height plus margin y. Okay, so let's put this together like this. Okay, so now, okay, now we got that, and now basically all we do is we say we'll start x, and then we go until end x, and here we say start y, and then we go until end y. All right. Okay. Still have the same similar problem. So we're actually just drawing here. It's kind of interesting and funny, but I would like to understand why this is happening. So basically, so these are not drawing past the game. So, oh, okay. So that makes sense. So we now need to make our offset, right? So basically what we need to do is we need to start at start x and go to end x when we draw the, start y and end y when we draw the column, and then do from start x to end x when we do the row, right? So does it make sense? I'm going to show this here. Okay, so basically, right, we have, this is our game. This is basically our game that we actually, which is filled with tiles and everything, right? But we want to draw beyond that. So we introduced a margin, right? We're saying start drawing actually around the game, left and right, okay? And so what we're doing is, well, now the row cannot just start at 0 of the game, right? Because we said we at a margin, so this is like, we are in negative x land here, right? So this is kind of 0 right here. This is our origin, 0, 0, right? And we are now drawing into negative origin. So we also need to tell the row when it draws to start here, draw all the way, and then draw past the end of the game. And then the same with the column, right? So basically this is, so we'd be in negative y down here, and we would be past the game here. And we need to tell the column to start not at 0, 0, but start here and draw all the way up there, right? That's basically what we have been doing right now. And I'm pretty sure this works now. Okay, cool. So now we got a grid system that goes past the game. And that's kind of cool. And now it's moving with the game. Okay, cool. So I'm going to check this in at this point. I'm going to remove everything that's not needed for now. We get rid of the background camera just for now. and we'll start over. Sometimes cool to do that. All right, and start from scratch. All right, so we check that in. Let's say grid, drawing, past, drawing with margin around game. Okay. So now, what we can do now is we can now reintroduce what we had. So I'm just actually going to undo the deletes because actually we do need the camera now. Okay, so we got the camera back. Here we don't use the background lerp yet, right? So what we'll first do, we'll take the camera as I think I now actually see my mistake while we're talking about this. Okay, so this is a camera now. So it should be the same as our real camera. So what we actually should be able to do now is to say canvas.save, translate the camera the same way, except now we're using the background camera, right? And then we draw the, actually we do that, obviously not here, we draw that when we do the grid, right? And then we say canvas.restore, okay? Okay, so now actually nothing should have changed. Right, okay, so we're still drawing the grid like this. Okay, and we're still following exactly. Now, what we'll do is this. We change the background camera. So basically what the mistake that I made, I translate off the camera, right? And then I translate it again. And that's why the grid was doing weird things, right? Because the camera was already translated. So what we actually need to, we need to somehow store the camera in a variable. And then we say the camera of the player, right? That's following the player is this. And the background camera is also translating, but it is doing so a little less fast, right? Background lerp, background lerp, lerp. All right, cool. Now what's happening here? Oh, I'm using cons. This has happened. So by the way, someone asked me if I'm doing games for a living. Unfortunately not, but I'm also happy with working for Cypress. Here's a shirt I'm wearing. This is my company, Cypress. Not my company. I'm working for them. It's enjoyable. And while I'm working for them, I'm using TypeScript. And TypeScript and Dart are very similar languages in certain ways, but then, you know, const is actually final in Dart, and certain things are just slightly different. So switching back and forth, I sometimes get confused. All right, so now actually we should have the effect already. So now we have that. Okay, so it's still following exactly. That's not what we want. So let's see. Oh, because we say current is the camera, right? Yes, so basically, I get it now. So actually this one is wrong. What we need to do, we need to base this translate, we need to base it off the background camera. Otherwise, it will just like be jumped basically to the camera. So now we can see it's different. Like, okay, cool. Now we have that, and it almost looks like before, right? But I swear that it's not the same. If we make this like 8 and see how that works. Okay, now we get, now we get some sort of a panning effect going on, right? Where like if we make this like a background, like let's say a nice little image, it will actually look pretty cool. I'm not going to import an expensive image right now. We'll think about what we can do there. We can maybe draw some stars in the background. But this will get, the effect's actually called parallax, which I'm after. I'm trying to do like some sort of a parallax effect. And we can see that now, right? We are kind of moving. And it looks like the illusion that we're trying to get is that this is kind of closer to us, and this is kind of the background that's further away. And that's what the parallax effect does. So we achieved it finally. And this is an example where, I tried this first without understanding what I'm really doing, tried to do too many things at once. And then we had this issue. And so it's a lot of times, if you run into these problems, just step back, and then you figure it out. So that's the lesson learned for this section. Cool. I kind of like it. And as you can see, like the grid needs to be a little bigger in order to make this work, right? We need to have a margin in order, but the margin probably doesn't need to be that big, especially if we're on the phone. We can probably make it smaller. So what we'll do is we'll make the defaults smaller for now. We'll set it to, let's say if 10 works. All right, so let's see what that looks like. So we got 10. So now you can kind of see here we're running out, but that's perfect, right? We can always fix it. If you want it to be filling everything, even if you're on a big screen, we could, but otherwise you'll just basically have nothing up here and the game is just basically limited to this. Otherwise we can always fix that later, but for now that's fine. So that's something we can take to the bank and check it in. I'm also going to remove, I'm going to keep that, that's not a big deal right now. So I'm going to check that in, and I'm going to say, oh, by the way, I do have something, you should see something, but probably if I'm over here, you see this better. There should be some little TH Lawrence here. I put that in there. I'm basically TH Lawrence everywhere, on Twitter, on GitHub, on Twitch. What else is there? Yeah, it's pretty much also my website, which I haven't updated in a while. It's thlawrence.com, thlawrence.com. So everything is TH Lawrence. So just put that here, around here, I think. So around here. So you can kind of see that, and if you want, you can follow to get updates about future versions of the game and future episodes. Okay, so now I'm going to check this in, and I'm going to say game adding parallax effect using grid. So for now we're using the grid, but obviously we will make it something more fun later. All right, cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now we obviously want to go to the part where we want to update the health. So health already is working. So right now I'm going to hurt myself a lot. I'm going to hit a bunch of walls. And then I'm going to refresh the game by saving. And now you can see actually it updated the health, right? It basically is showing now we are a little bit damaged. But obviously that's not going to be how this will really work. What we'll actually have to do is we have to find a way to tell the game, the HUD part here, right? We have to tell it somehow that that something changed, right? So there are numerous ways of doing this. We could have some sort of event emitter. Dart discourages, actually, or Flutter, let's say, discourages using event emitters. They are kind of all hooked into streams and using RX, which is, by the way, I'm just going to show this. We are not going to use this, but RX Dart is a framework that a lot of people use. I use it as well. It is very useful, but as you can, here's actually an example like how you would get, a stream of keys, presses. It is very useful. I'm going to post this into the chat. Something to check out, but we will not use it. What we'll use instead, so another way we could do it is basically we'll pass our game and up kind of like a HUD updated callback, and then we'll just basically set the state in here. And that might just be sufficient. The other way is that we use a streaming provider. So basically how this works is you wrap a widget with a stream builder and you give it a stream. So what we'll do, actually, we'll do that. And that's let's just say the recommended way. So let's just look at the documentation here in Flutter. Stream builder. So basically, here's an example. Basically what you're doing, you have a stream builder, Then you give it a builder, and that basically the important part here is the snapshot, which basically contains the current state of the data. So basically, you're streaming data, meaning like every time the data changes, you emit another element into the stream. And then basically you can say, depending on whatever is in the stream, I'm going to render my widget differently, right? So let's start with that. Let's wrap it with a widget with a stream builder. Okay, and then instead of a child, we have well, first of all, we need a stream, and we'll have a builder. So the builder will basically just take the context which you're not interested in, and then it will take an async snapshot of something. So let's just do async snapshot. And now we have to think about what kind of data are we going to send? Well, it's going to be the HUD model, right? Let's see, what is it complaining? Async snapshot, the HUD model, which is or snapshot. Okay. And interesting. Do we not? Oh, we called it stats model, right? Because it has all kinds of stats. And now we can import that. Okay. So now basically, instead of taking the game model.stats, we could actually, because they are global in a way, because there's only one game model at a time, but we're not going to do that. We're actually going to take the snapshot data, right? So that's the first step. But we have to provide it some initial data. And so we take basically whatever was passed to us in the game model. That's we take those stats. Fine. So now even if somehow our game model wasn't getting updated and we still get a new snapshot here, this will work. Really, for practical purposes, this is totally the same in this case. If we were using game model data here or snapshot.data, right? Well, the thing is now that we don't have the stream yet, so we need to provide the stream. And so what we're going to do, we're going to have on the game model, we're going to have a HUD. Well, actually, you know what? It doesn't make sense to do this on the game model. So we only have one stats thing, right? So actually what we should do, we do stats dot, and we'll say we want a stream. So we want an update stream of the stats. And so I came up with a naming convention that every time it's a stream, I put a $sign behind it to signify this is a stream. So that's something I use to make sure that I know that it's a stream right away. You might call this Hungarian notation, but you know, a lot of times you have update method as well, so you can kind of like distinguish that. So you get around like these issues. Okay, so we create the getter update. So what does the update need to be? So let's like go back here. The stream. What does this want? Okay, go here. Let's look at the stream. So the stream of T, right? That's the stream. So basically, the update needs to be some sort of a stream. Okay. And as I said, I did this before with RX, reactive extensions, but I do not want to do it this way this time. What I want to do instead, I want to use the native stream that's built into Dart. Stream builder example. Let's try to see an example that does this without RxJS. Hopefully this one is one. Okay, that part we have. So we have the state. Okay, and then they're using Rx. Okay. So that is our X right there. Try to find another one. The stream controller. Okay, so we need a stream controller first. So let's do that. So we'll in our stats model. Where did we put that stats model? So let's move that next to it. Okay. So in our stats model, first of all, we will create a final stream controller. of stats model. And we'll call that the update stream, and we'll be underscores. This is a private one. And so now every time we update the player health, we actually need to push into there. So first of all, we need to make the player health a private, and then basically we need to make a setter and a getter. So let's see. Let's make a getter and a setter around this one. Okay, so now the getter is easy. It just goes and gets it. And the setter, though, what we're going to do, we assign our value, and we'll push into our stream, update stream dot add, and we're adding ourselves. Okay. So what we need to do is here we need to set it, and we're actually going to use our getter, our setter. It doesn't want to allow us to do this, so. But actually, we don't need to, when we construct it, right, it's fine to just assign it here. Okay, fix that. Okay, cool. So now we have our player health set. What is it complaining about now? At final field. Oh, so the stream controller we need to initialize. So the update equals basically we just create a stream controller. And so we can give here on listen, on pause, on resume, on cancel. We don't need any of that. So we are fine like this. Okay, now we got our stream controller. We are pushing updates. So now the only thing that we need to figure out is like, what do we return from here? So here's the stream controller. We got the events. We're adding the events, right? And so now let's see how, so this says events.stream. See that? So all we need to do here is we need to return a stream of our stats model. And we just need to return. Did I do this wrong again? Does the get need to go here? I think it does. Okay. So we just basically return the update control stream, and we say the stream. There are certain issues here where there was something about broadcast stream. So basically, if you just return the stream, then only one can subscribe, and otherwise it all breaks. So in our case, that would actually work, but if anyone else would want to subscribe to this, so for now we're going to just return it like this, and it will bomb once we in our game we want to get this update stream somewhere else. Then we'll basically bomb, and then we have to make it a broadcast stream, right? So let's just talk about that in a second here with the documentation. So we have the stream class, and there's as broadcast stream, right? So basically, a broadcast stream returns a multi-subscription stream, right? Which means like multiple subscribers are allowed. With the default stream, that's not allowed. Okay, so we got our stream, and we didn't use any RX. Let's see if this actually works. We should now actually get updates already, right? Because we implemented everything. So let's see. Now, once I hit the wall, we should see the effect. So let's hit a wall here. Oh, look at that. It works. See that? I hit a wall, my health goes down. Perfect. So this is kind of like that, you know, I kind of understand why the Flutter folks are saying that don't use event emitters anymore. Streams are so much nicer. Here we can easily say, right, we can then pipe this to something and where we can basically filter things out. Obviously, if we were to do a bunch of operations on that stream, which we are not, it would make sense to use RxJS or RxDart, but we don't have to in this case. Doesn't make sense. So now we can remove our little log message, which I don't know where we have that, so I'm just going to search for that. All right, so we don't need that debug print anymore, and now we should be fine. So our player will keep his bad health, and everything will keep working. Okay, cool. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to implement shooting on the player. So basically, we will allow the player to fire shots, right? And that's the next episode. That will probably maybe even take us 2 episodes. And then just to give the roadmap, the next ones that we need to do, obviously, is in order to improve our health, we need to collect health med kits or something like that, right? To get our health a little bit improved. And then we'll also have a limited amount of ammo once we start firing shots. And so we'll have a little bar here about how much ammo we have left, and then we'll have some ammo packs that we can collect, right? So what I'll do, this is perfectly fine. Actually, let's look through the code real quick. We should actually make this a almost like a habit of checking what we're doing, going to check in before we're checking it in. So I'm just going to look through the code as a summary, what we did. So we added Stream Builder here to our HUD widget. We wrapped it in Stream Builder to get updates, right? And the updates are coming now from the stats model. You could argue okay, now the stats model includes the whole stream and stuff. So we could have had a separate property, which is like the state. But it's perfectly fine. We will, once we send things to the server, we will have to serialize the model anyways, right? We will not be able to send the model as is. And then what else do? We remove the debug print. Okay, so that looks fine. We can actually commit all this and say, the HUD, hooking, HUD stats changes to HUD view widget via a stream, right? Okay, let's commit that, and we're good. I will now actually go ahead and tag this. Git tag episode 14 end. Okay, and we are done. So this is this episode. Actually, we're finishing like just 5 minutes earlier. Everyone who just tuned in, I'm sorry. We just reached a good point to. Actually, I might just take 5 minutes. There was a question here. Solar Seller. I hope you're still in the stream. Saying Dart is really difficult. I'm not sure if I agree 100%. It might be more difficult to get started with than something like, let's say, JavaScript, where you don't need to have types. But in the long run, it actually saves you a bunch of time to have those types because you find bugs earlier. It is very similar in some ways, I think, to something like C#. So, if someone is familiar with C# or maybe even Java, it's easy to jump onto Dart. Also, if you start using things like TypeScript, even in web development, I would say that the learning curve is almost similar. But then you buy yourself with that. You buy yourself like the added type safety, and basically if your project gets large, you kind of it really is worth it. Like you also spend a little more time defining the types, and obviously you get some errors that you know everything is correct, but the compiler is telling you differently. So it's not a bad deal in most cases, but in that case, obviously you have some extra work to do, but it's always worth it. So at this point, I'm going to actually stop the stream, and I will be back in exactly 5 minutes. So it's 7:50 now here where I am. Wow, that's weird. Is anyone seeing that? Okay. 7:50 where I am. At 7:55, I'll be back. Thanks for watching.